Okay, I'm going to get started. Hello everybody. I would like to welcome you to our webinar this morning, where we are going to be discussing retrofitting for safer, warmer, more energy efficient homes. Just a bit of housekeeping to start off with. You are welcome to submit any questions during the session in the top right hand pane of your screen. I have my able assistant in the background, Kiki, who is going to be keeping an eye on those questions, ready for a Q&A at the end of the sessions. Cameras and microphones will be open at the end of the presentations but kept off during the presentations, and you're welcome to have open questions. You don't just have to submit by the question button. And for your information as well, there is a case study pack available to you in the materials section in the webinar as well. I'll introduce myself. I am Emma Bitting. I'm a Customer Success Manager at Switchee. I've been with Switchee for just over 2 years. I'm going to be discussing how we've been working with Haig and E.ON over the past 18 months. And I would like to introduce today Dan Gatenby, Sustainability Manager at Haig Housing, and also Ian Cartledge, Business Development Manager from E.ON. The session today is going to be a top-line overview of Switchee. I'll then hand over to Dan, who is going to take you through the process from Haig's perspective, and then I'll pass over to Ian, who will do a summary from E.ON's perspective, and then at the end we'll do a wrap-up talking about what comes next after the retrofit works are completed, and then there'll be the opportunity for a Q&A. So what is it that Switchee is actually solving? Well, Switchee exists to improve the quality of life for people living in rented homes. We're the UK's largest platform of internet connected devices that help reduce fuel bills and provide a real-time data from your homes. We were established in 2015, and in fact this year is our 10th anniversary, and we are exist exclusively for social housing and work with over 20 registered providers in the UK. Essentially, we are looking at 6 key pillars to support those registered providers, from supporting with fuel poverty, damp and mould, engagement with residents, and looking at preventative and proactive maintenance and management of homes. And obviously today with a key focus on energy efficiency, net zero, and that strategic asset management. We do that by utilising smart thermostat into social housing. That's capturing data every 8 to 10 minutes via 5 sensors monitoring the conditions in the home up to 100 square metres. That gives us capabilities to add additional sensors as well, such as energy clamps, and we can also facilitate smart meter data via our device messaging. Residents have the choice to access our resident app that allows them to control their heating from out of home. And we also have some pre-set scheduling, which assists with alternative heating types like heat pumps. The data from the device is then transferred via a network agnostic SIM that brings the data up into our cloud, where we process that data and produce insights to our cloud portal. There's no cost to the resident from that transfer of data. That's all borne by the housing provider, but the data that we're capturing really facilitates how we support the residents in their home. We are capturing billions of data points. That data can be accessed via our portal or via an API that can ingest into your housing management systems, and really gives you a macro and micro view of your housing portfolio where the stock is installed. We've had great feedback from residents as well. It's not just about the housing providers who have our Switchee devices. Here we have a lovely quote from one of the beneficiaries from Haig that's also reinforcing that having Switchee in their home is not just about having technology and a device on the wall. We also have a team supporting in the background for anybody that needs to speak to a human being, and we know that that barrier to accessing technology can be big for some residents, but it's really appreciated by residents that Switchee has a team that can support them and give them that personalised human service. I'm going to show you a video now that just gives you a feel for how Haig is being supported by Switchee for both a resident and a team member perspective.
The communication and messaging function gives us another channel to speak to our residents. The response rate is high as well, higher than the other channels that we use to contact residents.
Communication on a device works extremely well because we get a response from the residents straight away.
This device, which is a visual device, you can just look at and it will tell you this message and it will indicate, is this a second page, to press here.
After initial trial, we have found that we have at least received a 98% access rate when we've arranged to visit tenants on their first response.
Can give us brief messages which we can flick through, which are really useful and provide us with important information.
The fact that you know who it is, Haig contacting you, is quite reassuring to know that you can be there quickly if you needed to be.
This is a modern way of providing the individual with useful, targeted information.
This definitely has value for the resident. It keeps them in touch with us, we're able to communicate with them. It's simple, it's easy, it's effective and it's quick.
We're always on a journey, continuing to listen, continuing to learn, taking the product, taking its capabilities, listening to residents and doing more and more and more.
And that is a beautiful segue into handing over to Dan. Hi, Dan. It's over to you.
Morning, Emma. Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name's Dan Gatesby. I'm the Sustainability Manager at Haig Housing Trust. We provide homes to service veterans. I'm a service veteran myself. I was discharged from the Navy after 17 years of service. So a little bit about me, what drives me, the environment. When I left the military, I had a Sorry about that. Teams is forcing itself to open on me, which is very frustrating. Okay, sorry, I'll carry on. I did close it down, but it's forcing itself to open until we do an update, so apologies for that. Yes, so I'm passionate about sustainability. I want to have a positive impact on people's lives. Being a northerner, as you can probably tell from my accent, I like to save money, both my own and other people's. Next slide, please. And again. So now I'd just like to move on to who are Haig Housing, because I'm sure a lot of people won't have heard of us before. So like I said, we're a social housing provider that provides homes specifically for service veterans. We're a charity. We've been going nearly 100 years now, and we've got around about 1,500 properties spread across 50 locations. We're not a registered provider of social housing, but we do provide social housing by definition, and we've kind of grown over time as squadrons and different units have had their own supports for service veterans as when it comes to housing, and they've disbanded over time, and we've kind of absorbed them over that period of time. Originally grew out of Morden, which is our biggest estate, around about 350 units there. But a significant proportion of our properties are over 70 years old, and those properties are largely in conservation areas with generally solid wall brick construction. Next slide, please. So what are our key challenges as an organisation? As I just showed you the previous slide before with the disposition of our properties, we've got between 5 and 20-ish properties in various different places, from as far north as Edinburgh and Glasgow, as far west as Penzance and east as Norfolk. So we are spread out quite a lot when it comes to geography, which creates some difficulties when it comes to delivering works with contractors, maintaining the standards across all of that geography. We're only a small organisation. We've recently gone over the 60 threshold, but we don't have our own members of the team who do work on the properties. We don't have our own electricians or engineers, so we contract out for all the work that we deliver. We don't necessarily have the expertise in all of the areas that a larger housing provider would have. As I said before, around about 30% of our stock is in conservation areas, which I'm sure for those who are trying to deliver retrofit works, you're aware, delivers some extra challenges when it comes to planning and trying to retain the look and feel of the properties, whilst ensuring that the people who live in them don't pay the price for that. Our housing stock age, as I mentioned before, around about 74% of our properties are pre-1959, so it's quite an old housing stock as well, which comes with its own unique challenges. We've got a specific resident demographic. We've got young families all the way through to more older people who've been, left the services a long time ago, and all the different things in between that. But because we also deal with service veterans, we also have mental and physical ailments to deal with that have come out of their service, which can also have extra challenges when trying to liaise with them and get works done, and can keep those open channels of communication. And then when it comes to our EPC status, as you can see from my donut there, we've got around 2/3 that are at the kind of A to C mark, and we've still got about 1/3 of our properties left to get up to the standard, where we're all anticipating that standard will be EPC C or the equivalent of that as the EPC methodology changes by 2030. And that's for England and Wales, but Scotland's going to probably want to do that earlier. 2028 is my latest understanding on that. So we've got to work around those devolution challenges as well. So it's not one standard across all of the countries that we're dealing with within our housing stock. Next slide, please. So why have Haig chosen to partner with E.ON and Switchee? So first of all, we're partnered with E.ON, and the relevant section of that is the green funding solution section, and Ian of E.ON will be talking more about that later. But why did Haig choose to do that? Well, they assisted us with access to grant funding. First of all, with educating us about what funds were available, between ECO and Haig and LAD, SHF as it was and SHF as it now is. We've got ORP in Wales and the Scottish version of SHF in Scotland, which I can't remember the full acronym, so I'm not even going to try. And various other grant funding options available to us. Secondly, they helped us pull together that bid writing and bid submission. For those who've gone through the process, it's gotten simpler, but it's still quite a long process. You need to do a lot of assessment of your stock when it comes to the energy efficiency of the stock as it is now and where we want to get it to. They support me with the business case drafting internally as well, so to get us into a position so we can submit a bid which is going to be competitive. Thereafter, if you choose to go with them, and we did on Wave 2.1, we can then they deliver a turnkey process. So right from the resident engagement through to the quality delivery, which is in line with past 2030, 35. It was 2019 and it will soon be 2023. Just Mac registered an MCS to make sure that the delivery that we're doing on the ground is up to the right standard and we're getting all the relevant assurances there. They also have a really well-experienced project management and grant admin support team. There's a lot of work involved in submitting a bid and getting it to be successful. Thereafter, the demands from a data perspective, data uploads, reconciliation, etc., can be quite demanding, especially when you've only got a small team. Just to add, the sustainability team was me as one, and when we won the Wave 2.1 bid, I managed to put a case in that was successful to get an assistant as well. So there's now 2 people within Haig dealing with delivery of what was around about 700 home project, and we're hoping to move forward with Wave 3 for another 300 homes as well. So we really needed that support from a contractor like E.ON to deliver that. And then we've also managed to deliver some really strong social value. We've been working with Building Heroes, using some of those credits from the Fusion 21 framework to support the delivery of training to service veterans in the green skills arena, so that they can be retrofit assessors by the end of that course. And we've delivered 2 of those courses. One's about to graduate this week, so I'll be popping up there to deliver that. So they've got that real experience of delivering these things. They've delivered right from the very start of this green funding opportunities that have been available. They've got their expertise across the board for all the types of measures that you would want to deliver. And they're also able to integrate with other elements such as Switchee. So I'm going to move on to that next, please. Next slide. Fantastic. Yeah, great. So why have Haig also partnered with Switchee? So we haven't been able to do this on Wave 2.1 for various reasons, but on any future projects that we deliver, we want to look at the quantitative data that Switchee can provide. It delivers time to heat, time to cool, damp and mold risk, fuel poverty risk, heat stroke risk, among other measures that it can do. So we can inform the Switchee device when the measure's been completed, whether that's an insulation measure, whether it's solar panels, whether it's a heat pump, whether it's an improvement to ventilation. And we can put a marker in the sand, and we can look at, before that, how long was it taking the home to heat? How quickly was it cooling down? What were the relative humidity and temperature measurements in that home? And then after we've delivered the measure, have those metrics increased or not? Has the intervention we've carried out actually worked or not? So that's what we want to do in future work, not just in sustainability measures, but when the team decide to maybe improve the ventilation in a home because of maybe a damp and mold risk, or they're carrying out a kitchen and bathroom upgrade, at which point we upgrade the spec of our ventilation system. Is that actually working? Is it delivering the results that we want for the home and the building structure, but also for the residents within it? And we intend to use Switchee for that quantitative data. And it really moves us forward, so we can start to use data as a key element of the decision-making process. As you saw in the video, resident engagement is a real key element that we are exploring and will continue to run out as we get greater penetration of the device amongst our stock. But we can keep residents informed. We started in Morden when we've got, like I said, around 350 units. And as things changed on the estate, last minute short notice or parking permits or something was happening, and we wanted to get that message out to the residents quickly, we can send a message to the residents via the device, and then the members of the household will get that message, whoever's in the home at the time, and we can see whether they've read and actually received for that message as well. So as we stated earlier, we're getting quite high response rates, and 80+% of people who have been sent those messages are responding and interacting with that message, which I'm told from my comms team is very good. When we send out emails, we get a lesser response rate. Letters, we don't know whether it's been read or it's gone straight in the bin, and so on. So we can actually measure that response rate, and from what I'm told, it's very good. Another element we've been using, and you saw one of our housing officers in Morden talk about a different way of doing our annual tenancy reviews and booking those appointments. I'm sure you're all aware that first-time access rates can be challenging, and if you have to revisit again and again, and your team's having to drive out and drive back again and again, we're using a system to offer choice to residents. So the housing officer or manager is going to be in your area this week. What day is best for you? Okay, you select that. Okay, on that day, do you prefer a morning or an afternoon appointment? And they can select that as well. And then the housing team can build their appointment plan around the choices that our residents make. So they're empowered, and they're more likely to be in. They're not doing the school run, or they're not at work at the time that they've selected. And then you can use a device to send reminders a week before, the day before, because everybody leads busy lives and it's easy to forget about these things. And we can also do it for pre and post work surveys. So how was that gas safety check that happened? Were you happy with the service that was delivered to you, or the measure that's been carried out when it comes to sustainability works? Put my teeth back in. And finally, we can use it to be more proactive. I don't know about your organisation, but our organisation reacts more often than it's proactive, and we want to change that. So we're reacting to residents calling us. We're reacting to maybe those silent minority or majority who don't really tell us that there's a problem, and we react in when someone else goes in the property and sees it. When we look at the data from the Switchee device, we can see where our highest risk is for damp and mold, and we can see whether that's the home is not being heated or retaining its heat well. So is there a fuel poverty issue there that we can direct interventions along, or is there an issue with the heating system or the insulation? And we can be more proactive because we're not doing that emergency work, which is more expensive to do. So we're looking to integrate that into our ways of working. So like I say, we can be a more proactive organisation and deal with things before it becomes a mold problem, before it gets to the latter stages and poses a health risk to our residents and starts to impact on the health of the physical building itself. There's a whole myriad of reasons there. I'm sure if you've got any questions, keep firing them into the questions box, and we can come to the questions at the end. But I think that concludes my element of the presentation. So we'll move on to Ian.
Brilliant, thank you, Dan. I think it's testimony to how much work you've put into selecting your partners, but also the dedication you have to supporting your residents and Haig Housing, I should say beneficiaries, because it's a really thorough programme of works that you put in place. So now I would like to hand over to Ian. Welcome, Ian. Over to you.
Good morning. Many thanks for allowing me to pop onto this webinar this morning. Thank you as well to Emma and to Dan for those kind words of the work that we help our customers achieve. And what I'd like to do in this small little bit of presentation is introduce who we are. Obviously, people know E.ON as a big utility provider, but our team and the team that we work in are the kind of lovely side of utility, so to speak, because we help people spend the money in the most efficient way possible to try to improve people's homes. So just a little bit about myself. My name's Ian Cartledge. So I'm a business development manager. I'm based in the northwest of England, in Liverpool, but my role takes me to all parts of the country, supporting clients, be those local authorities, house associations and charities, access funding effectively from primarily government funding streams. So yeah, I'll just do a little bit of a presentation and then obviously we'll go into Q&A after that. So next slide, please, Chris Whitty style. And the next one, if that's okay. There we go. So yeah, what I thought I'd do, I thought I'd give everybody a little bit of an introduction about who we are, our kind of capabilities and the arenas that we currently operate in. So Green Funding Solutions, which is the team I'm in, is based in E.ON UK, and we are part of a wider department called EIS, or Energy Infrastructure Solutions. And what we help do is give, as it says, solutions to everyday problems that a lot of charities, local authorities, registered provider of housing, but also commercial partners have got. So we provide support and advice for those looking at district heating schemes, for example. So we know moving forward, district heating is going to be a massive, massive infrastructure project across the whole of the UK. We're a little bit behind the times in the UK with regards to district heating, and in Europe and particularly in Scandinavia. They've been having this sort of solution for many, many years. And we know that from a kind of cities perspective, this is where all our big kind of cities are moving towards. So we can help plan, bring in different solutions and organise commercial partners and domestic partners together to basically access the district heating scheme. And we can help minimise people's bills by trying to be as efficient in that as possible. And as the technology improves, we can jump other partners on, such as hospitals, schools, and retail and those sort of things. We also have a control solutions department. So this helps with building management systems. So we have got the guys in our team that can provide all of the software and technologies that can support to make the systems that are already in place as efficient as possible. And that's really important. And we find that across the whole sector is that often a lot of money is spent on the capital side of energy, but that kind of tweaking and the management of how those systems work is as vital as putting in that investment. It allows the system to work as, again, efficiently as possible. We have a B2B side of the business as well, which is there desperately trying to reduce the costs of manufacturing, production, and we work with the big retailers and the big commercial partners up and down the UK, bringing in all expertise across from Europe into the UK. So it's been really, really helpful. We've got a heat zoning department as well. So expanding on that district heating side, we're looking at trying to make sure that the heat that can and energy that's created in one part of a district heating scheme can be moved into another. And again, that efficiency is the key thing. We've got a lighting and grid department, so we provide street scene lighting. We provide those lampposts that you see up and down the streets, and we also provide access into the grid network as well. And we've also, just to kind of finish, I suppose, is the E.ON Drive side of the business, which we provide all more important as we move forward into kind of retrofitting and decarbonising. We provide EV vehicle access to charging across the network. We've got a new scheme as well called EDRI, which is looking to install thousands of electric vehicle charging points into local authority, car parks, for example, just trying to gain more and more access into the EV network. And as somebody who's got an EV currently, that's more and more important, particularly if you go maybe north of the Watford Gap. I think the EV network isn't as expanded as it is. And I think the more and more that we can support across the country, the better. So that's just a little bit of an introduction about not just the fact that we do retrofit and decarbonisation into residential homes, we provide a lot of other things as well. So next slide, please. There we go. So yeah, just to kind of expand on what kind of Dan and Emma said, really thought I'd just give you a little bit of an update of where we've been, where we've come from, and currently what we're looking to do as well. So Green Funding Solutions, it's a small part of E.ON UK. We were formed back in 2020. So I've been there since the get-go. So I'm one of the OGs, I think the youth say. And we've been set up basically to support those three kind of client groups, be it councils, again, the house associations and charities, to try to access funding. So as you can see from the table there on the left, we've been around since LAD 1A, which was a very short scheme, if I remember rightly. It came and was kind of developed out of COVID as a kind of green skills, trying to get the economy back going again. It was only operational for around 6 months, and it effectively tried to get some sort of retrofit into social properties. So we were there and we only delivered a small amount. I think the available funding was around 80 million and we got about 10% of that. So we delivered around 8 projects. But that really set us up. I think we had about 15 members of staff back then, going through all of these schemes right the way up to, as you can see, SHCF Wave 2.2. And now we're delivering as well, or hoping to deliver up to Wave 3 of the Warm Homes Fund social housing scheme. We've grown and grown and grown, and we've got about 117 members of staff now. So as you can see, over 4 years, we've really brought in the kind of retrofit skills and expertise based on those projects that we've delivered. And we've got a 97% success rate in supporting clients secure funding. So at the stage of when customers are looking to have a kind of idea of the projects and programs they'd like to include in a bid, that's when we're approached. And often I like to say that we're seen by many as a kind of energy team by proxy. I'm local authority, ex-local authority. So I was part of a small local authority up in Merseyside, and post kind of 2010, we saw a lot of the kind of expertise, all the wise heads, they kind of left the authority. and we were left very much with myself and a couple of other people who were there kind of holding the fort, trying to come up with some sort of plan of what we could do with our capital spend and what have you. And that's the same all over the country. We know that staff and support isn't there in a lot of house associations and councils, so we provide that support, and we are very much principal contractor driven. We are technology agnostic, so we obviously look at all the different technologies that could possibly go into a scheme, and we look to install whatever is best for the property, and primarily obviously through a whole house PAS 2035 approach, installing where we can insulation first, and then moving as the PAS journey goes with it, to low carbon heating, and then finally into renewable technology. So yeah, next slide, please. Okay, so this is a typical, I'd say a typical project of what we've seen since kind of 2020. And this has helped us develop the solution that we've got, basically, that has been really successful, and I think a lot of customers have really valued, which is what we call our full turnkey solution. We ask customers and clients to give us the real basics of what they know about the stock that they've got. So it varies up and down the country. It varies from local authority to house association. It really does depend on the kind of history of the area. Some councils have got a really amazing data set, and then some have literally, they're at ground zero and they do not know where to begin. So what we tend to do is we tend to ask them for basically a stock analysis and a stock list. What do you know? What has happened over the last 5-10 years? Do you hold any EPC data? Do you hold any data of what plans happened 5 years ago? Where were the problems? Is there a political issue that we need to be aware of? Is there a wider regeneration scheme across the local authority or across the kind of social housing area that you're looking at? And we get that information, and we do a very high level desktop exercise just to see what we think might be a typical project. We also ask local authorities and house associations and charities whether they've got any capital spend, because that's vital, because as we know, since 2020, the actual programs of grants and funds, the element of co-funding that has needed to be provided by the clients has actually increased, and we expect that to be the case again. I think the days of the government paying fully funding for schemes are over. I think there's a massive acknowledgement of value for money, so clients are asked to often contribute now up to 50% and above that. So we ask all of these pertinent questions to then gauge what we think a scheme could be. We do then some property modelling. So we've got a data set and a system behind the scenes, which has got around 30 different plug-in software packages, which then gives a really good idea about different properties and what those properties should have as a measure. And that uses EPC data, it uses RDSAP, it uses information that are all publicly available as well. But it's quite useful because we can plug in this into the stock and the property information, and it comes out with our kind of ideas of measures. We offer, as Dan mentioned in his pitch, the kind of bid writing support. So we've got a dedicated team within E.ON who help write the bids. So it kind of works hand in glove with the client, and we did this with Dan to see what the most important bits are that we want to tease out of a good bid. Make sure that they're not all similar bids. We want to make sure that everything is pulled out that is important about the individual client. And then we move on to resident engagement. And this is probably the big thing. What we say is probably about 3 to 6 months before an actual project is going to be delivered or even applied for, please speak to your customers. It's massive. If you have a fully engaged customer, and that's where Switchee have come in, you have massive opportunities. If not, you will get resident pushback, and that will always slow a project down. We're fully PAS 2035 service compliant. We've got all of that retrofit design, assessment and coordination. Project management, as you can imagine, we're tip top. We've got an accredited supply chain, so we've got a ridiculous amount of contractors that support us nationally, and we've got those working on the scheme with Haig currently, and we can go right the way up to the kind of Highlands of Scotland, right the way down to the Isle of Wight and what have you. So we've got that network of contractors that can help deliver, and we also provide the kind of reporting and compliance as well, which is vital when you're trying to deliver on a project to the government. It's there. They need the reports. They need them to be of good quality, and they need them to be accurate, as you can imagine. Next slide, please. So just briefly, our kind of learnings from Haig and the scheme that we've delivered with them on Wave 2.1. It's resident engagement, as I mentioned. Please have a good tenant engagement strategy. We help our customers and clients do this, and it's really put us in good stead over the last 4 years. It just makes access to properties and brings the whole customer base back in. Switchee has allowed that to do that for Haig, and the beneficiaries of Haig have been really, really proactive. This is personally my favourite scheme that I've ever delivered at E.ON. It's really good outcomes, and I hope obviously moving forward into Wave 3, which has been announced today, and congratulations to all those that have received funding. Please do this as part of your project. Have a look for inaccurate data, so your stock data. Have a backup list. Please don't rely on that initial list. We know that properties will go in and properties will go out. Some properties won't be eligible. Some properties will be eligible, but the property itself might not be suitable for the tight windows of the actual project. So please have a backup list. Have a look at the cost caps. And what we try to do is we try to average out spend across properties to make sure that clients and customers get the most bang for the buck, and we did that with Haig, trying to make sure that value for money is there, because money is always tight. Use a procurement framework. So that is obviously the easiest and the quickest way to actually procure a contractor. On this scheme, Haig used Fusion 21, and obviously the Procurement Act 2023 came in 2 weeks ago now, and frameworks are front and centre in that, and it brings a level of safety and flexibility as well if you're going through that procurement process. We try to come up with solutions for hard to treat properties, or as I call them now, difficult to decarbonise properties. They're out there. They've often been left, and that's the beauty of this scheme, is that we're now looking at properties which I wouldn't say were the kind of left to the end, that they weren't. They're the ones that we need to spend the most time on. And the kind of future project, which is 3 years in length, will give us that time. Contingency funds and a reserve property list. Please, if you've got it, please do that, because things will pop up, as we all know. Engage with your planning teams. I'm a planner by trade. They will engage with you, and if you engage early with them, and building control and your DNOs, who can often be a little bit slow to get up to speed, again, your project will fly and will be a lot quicker come the end of the scheme. Recruitment, training, onboarding, and new supply chain. Have a look at if there's any local supply chain in your area that, like E.ON, we onboard local supply chain. So we always use local labour to desperately try to bring that kind of bang for the buck in the local area. So if you've got any contractors that you'd like, for example, a principal contractor like E.ON to onboard and utilise, that's what we do. And now, as we're moving into the kind of new funding phase over the next 3 years, consider the impacts on SAP 10 and HEM across your project, and make sure that you're utilising the most useful kind of experts in the field, which thankfully we do have. And then obviously the new funding has got a new process as well around batching and phasing, which is something that we've got experience of delivering through local authorities under Haig, and we're able to do that now moving forward into local grant and social housing scheme as well. So there are main learnings from Haig. So yeah, I'll just next slide, please. I think that's my final slide. There you go. There's my email address there if anyone would like to contact me to receive any further information. And I think I went over by a couple of minutes, and many apologies, Emma.
I'll let you off, Ian. There were some good insights in there, and I cannot agree more on the importance of the tenant engagement and the reliance on having data in the first place that you can rely on, or at least have a backup list. I've come across that challenge with a number of housing providers. So yeah, really great tips there. Thank you. I am now going to talk about my view on things of the sort of the slides that we've seen so far and the discussions we've had from Dan and Ian. I'm glad to say that it's backing up what I am ending up with in these slides, which is good news. And I'm just going to give some sort of top line insights from that data perspective that we have. We've got 40,000 homes, or over 40,000 homes now with switches installed, and that data set becomes incredibly powerful when we're starting to look at the impact of the works like retrofit, but also on the impact it has on the resident. So it's very much that home and resident perspective, and understanding what's happened in the home before and after retrofit, and then how the resident is living in that home and what impact it's had, because ultimately this is for sustainability, and sustainability means over time, not just the improvements you're making in the moment. Our EPC data review on the 40,000 properties we've got, it suggests that there is actually very little correlation, unfortunately, between EPC scores and the actual property performance. That won't be a surprise. We know we've got the review of the EPC happening at the moment, and the data reflects that. I love it when data does that. It's always more helpful when you're wanting to make changes. Another interesting thing that we can look at with our data is that heat loss rate. So if we're looking at the performance of a property after works, or even before works have been completed, how quickly a property is losing heat, and that gives us some clues about how a boiler is performing. But equally, it can give us some clues about how the heating is being used. But what we do see that's really stark is that the worst performing properties actually use their heating for nearly 2 hours more than the better performing properties as well. So this starts to give us some really valuable insights into how we can look to save money for residents, but also how we can target proactive repairs. And this is something that isn't going to change. The retrofit is a moment in time. The fact that we've got the devices in, and in theory they should be lasting as long as the boiler or the heating system itself, that's years of information that we're gathering on the performance of the heating systems, and then we can truly be supportive to a resident and respond to what we're seeing is happening in the home. In some of these instances, it could be down to how the resident is using the heating, but equally it could be an inefficient heating system that could be improved. And if we're going sort of looking at how people are using and their heating, and then how well that property is performing and retaining the heat that they're putting into the home, there's also some key insights there in terms of how quickly they're losing the heat, and how they're retaining the heat. You've got that big chunk in the middle, but what we're trying to look for is the outliers. What can we replicate in the future that's worked really effectively, and what's been the impact of that? And equally, which are the properties that are underperforming from what we expected, and how can we support that and target the resources accordingly for future waves? And this is a really interesting way of looking at it, is to take your EPC data and then look at your heat loss and your heat loss rate in those properties. What you can see on the left is your average time to heat in homes, and your average number of hours using that heating. We have ragged that to look at how those properties are performing, and essentially we've given ourselves a list of properties that we target. This is an example from a housing provider where we looked at their full retrofit. What we found was that there was a pocket of properties, which in that top left quadrant, that actually wasn't performing as we expected, and they're the ones that we target to go and do deeper analysis of, and to review whether or not there is anything in the fabric of the building or with those residents that live in the homes that could have additional support. But what's really interesting is then when you overlay that with the EPC data, which is the chart on the plot on the right-hand side, where you can see that scattered across EPCs. So this data becomes really powerful when you're wanting to have further discussions and actually challenge some of the views on where EPC is a measure of decisions made and where you're directing your resources. So again, it's about that future information and power of that data that you can provide. If I was looking at sort of the three things that I'd summarise from what we do working with housing providers and the likes of contractors like E.ON, is really about the power of the data, and that that data is what's going to secure you your further funding. By combining those data sets of what we know, what we've learned during the process, and what happens afterwards, we've got examples where Switchee has been able to support housing providers with their additional bids as well for funding outside of sustainability, or for specific schemes in regional funding bids, and things like the heat network scheme as well. Coming back to Ian's point about targeted resident support, without question, but it's all about the partnership and what we learn and working together. But it's highlighting where maybe the communication didn't work as effectively, or there was a lack of understanding from the residents that lived in that home, and how we can support it. It means that we can give targeted support to those residents, and it isn't just about doing it through the technology, it's also about arranging those face-to-face visits and helping people who need a one-to-one assistance with some of the new technology or the new ways of living in their homes. And then finally, it's really that proactive prevention, that data being used powerfully to improve your future plans and to modify and improve future deployments. And that ends our webinar for today. We now have time for questions, and I think Kiki has been firing some questions over to me, and I'm going to open this up to Dan and Ian, because you don't want to keep listening to me talking. So let me see. So we've got a few questions. I'm going to just open up. I think this first one is probably going to be a question for Ian. So how can energy providers and housing organisations work together to create long-term sustainable solutions that will prioritise both resident well-being and energy efficiency? Just a small question there, Ian.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. I think that's the main aim of what DESNZ have been trying to, or BEIS in its previous iteration, have been trying to do for a long time now. We've been quite open in our kind of journey since 2020, in that we're not particularly interested in short-term projects. We're not a kind of principal contractor that is there that's going to jump in for 6 to 12 months and then you never see us again. We're trying desperately to have these long-term projects that can provide a relationship for both parties. So if a landlord or a council want to come on a journey with us, we will put as much resource and influence from our side into that as possible. And for example, we have got a strategic energy partnership with Coventry City Council, which is the first in the country, whereby we support the local authority in all things energy, domestic retrofit, commercial retrofit, cars, what have you. And we can bring in all of the expertise that we've got across the whole of our group, be it from Germany, France, the UK. And what that's enabled us to do is to see and to bring in, and it's a phrase that I don't particularly like, but the art of the possible, which is a lot of people use. It allows us to have the space to look a bit more strategic behind the scenes and not just be 100% concentrating on that. You know, we've got 12 months to deliver 100 retrofit properties. What we try to do is to say, okay, we've got 100 retrofit properties to do. What else can we do along the side of that? And that brings in value for money. It allows us to bring in more supply chain. And that's what we're trying to do moving forward in the kind of the 3 years that we've got now under the local grant and under the social housing scheme, is to kind of embed ourselves with the customers so that it's not just going to be for 3 years. We want to look to the next project that will take us up to 2030, that will take us up to 2040. That's what we think is the future, not just to be a contract that goes in for 12 months and then see you later when the money kind of ends.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with that perspective. It's all about the more that you can add. It's not just about doing what is asked of you. There's always potential for that broader opportunity, and that's what we should be doing. It shouldn't just be about ticking that box. It should be about, well, what are we trying to achieve, and what more could we achieve with this in a smarter way? I really like that perspective. I have a question for Dan specifically from one of the attendees today. Is Dan utilising RD SAP data from stock condition surveys for his EPC percentages? In brackets, utilising the energy side of stock surveys rather than the actual EPCs?
Um, no, this is the short answer there. I'm using the data that's on the EPC. So when I assess whether it's an EPC C or a D, it's from the actual energy performance certificate itself. We are on a journey when it comes to data and improving the quality of it, which Switchee are supporting us with. So one of the things I'm not able to do at this particular point in time is data scrape from the EPC system. I don't have a tool that I can do that with. So I'm still using the kind of age-old, tried and trusted spreadsheet kind of methodology. But what Emma and her team are going to do for me is they're going to do a data scrape once a month for me. So as we move through and we upgrade and we do a new EPC at any point in the journey of a house, you know, whether that's a new tenant or at the end of a project or we've done some works. When those are uploaded, what we're going to do is Emma's going to and her team are going to do a data scrape for me, which is going to produce an EPC register, which I'll create a dashboard at the front end of, so that I can see that transition and that journey. And then another key element of it, which is something we're moving into, is that measurement of carbon footprint for our properties. We're all fully aware that, you know, EPCs have their flaws and they're a snapshot, but it's all we've got at the moment to provide a benchmark. So we're also going to use that current and potential carbon footprint of the property as the EPC looks at this moment, to see if what we're doing is moving us in the right direction, and then see where else we need to deliver works. So yeah, that's how I'm using the EPC information at the moment. What E.ON and Ian's team allow us to do is they can get into that RDSAP data in a way that I haven't the time, capacity, or technology within Haig at the moment to do. So they can run those scenarios for me with the technology they've got to do that. I know there's lots of providers out there that will support with housing providers to do that themselves, but at the moment we've kind of outsourced that to E.ON, so we can run through different scenarios. As we looked at wave 3, we ideally wanted to do on those single skin properties external wall insulation. You know, all the data suggests that's the best thing to do to improve the insulation of a property. So we ran that through the models, and it agreed with that. But then when it came to how much that's going to cost, it turned out to be an unaffordable measure for us. So we had to go back to the more simpler insulation measures and maybe look at maybe a solar focused program, because we're hopeful that if we can reduce our residents' energy bills and with solar and insulation, solar would be more electric, then maybe they'll be able to fund the heating of their home better, and solve that problem. So you have to look at things in lots of different ways to see what's affordable for the organisation, what's going to have the biggest impact on the residents. And so far on wave 2.1, from what we can see, that solar program which we've started is having the biggest impact. So we had an install done recently, one of our residents, and he told me he usually spends somewhere between £10 to £12 a week on his electricity bill, and he's only had the solar installed for a few weeks, and it's not summer yet, but his electricity bill's gone down to £5 a week. So that's it. If you're on a low fixed income, that is a big increase, and can have, and whether you choose to put that into your heating and heat your home better, or whether you choose to have eat better, or have a luxury that's going to improve your mental well-being, it is up to the resident at the end of the day. But that's what we're here for. We're here to serve our beneficiaries and see what we can do alongside legislation which is driving us all in the right direction, to actually have the biggest impact on our residents. So I think I may have gone a little bit further away from the original question, but hopefully that answers it.
It's a really valid point as well, Dan, when you're talking to the tangible benefits to the resident, because sometimes it can feel like the benefits of retrofit are actually more about the asset than the person living in the home. And that's a challenge to convince residents to have those changes if they're not seeing it in their pocket. Ultimately, that really matters. We all feel the pinch, and even more so if you're already in a position where you're struggling with bills anyway. So I think it is important to bring that in, because ultimately that should be why we're doing these things in the first place.
And as we look to move forward, with things like solar and battery storage, people living in the home, they see it straight away. They see that, I can put my washing machine on and do my washing all week and it never costs me a penny, because if I just time it right and use the app, they can see that straight away. With things like insulation, which are more of a bugbear, especially things like loft insulation, because people tend to put their things that they want to keep but don't ever use in their loft, and it's going to be disturbing, and it's going to be workmen up and down, and they're going to have to empty the loft, and then can they put it all back in again, and have we be boarded in? It becomes something that the pain is high, but the realised benefit isn't as obvious. So I'm hopeful that as we roll Switchee out, so we've got it across all of our housing stock, and then we can put that marker in the sand, maybe it means the time to heat on the property is half an hour less. And if you're having your heating on half an hour less a day, we can quantify that, can't we, with just the standard tariffs that people tend to be on. And we can start to say to the resident, look, we're saving you, however, 3.5 hours of heating a week on your property, and actually it's retaining that heat for longer. So actually we can make that an hour a day. We can show them the benefits, which will be a really, really powerful tool as well. If I got one bit of advice and you're running a kind of dual program, do the things that people don't particularly want first, with solar as the carrot. If you do it the other way around, they're like, got me solar now, I'm happy. Oh, I'm not available. I'm, whatever. It becomes all too difficult to do the things that are a bit more of a pain, like underfloor insulation, loft insulation and stuff. That's one of my biggest learnings from delivering this work. We want to give them all the things, but we also want to motivate them in the right way.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. I like that tip. Always go for the carrot. There's always got to be something positive for them, hasn't there? Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm conscious that we are nearly at time. There was one other question that had come in asking about the analysis of the 40,000 homes. That is actually data that is available. It's across our 40,000. If you do want to reach out and get in touch and discuss that in more detail, believe it was somebody who works in the SMETA team at Desnes, please reach out to us. We have actually also got the capability now of accessing smart meter data through consent via the device as well, which is going to be a really powerful tool for the next wave of funding. So if anybody has any questions on that, please let us know. But as we are at time, I'm going to end there. Say thank you to Dan and Ian for joining us, and thank you to everybody who's come along and listened to our webinar today. Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.